think that maybe we can just use this like ambiently, like no need to pass around or anything.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We get this. All right. Thank you very much for coming out. Obviously, this panel is a little bit of a somber one. We've had a really devastating hurricane season in Florida and other parts of the Gulf of Mexico. And so the hope is that we can use this panel, and the time generously donated by the three experts that I have to my left, to provide you guys here in the room, the people who will be providing this through the recording, information on how, the types of disaster relief resources that are available, how to access them, and then how to prepare in the future for anything that may happen then. And so yeah, with that, quick introductions. I'll let you guys talk a little bit more about what you guys do, etc. later, but I have Dr. Andrew Ropicki with Florida SeaGrant, Devin Resko with Florida FWC, and McCaster with the Small Business Development Program at
Pinellas County Economic Development.
Thank you.
Small business.
Thank you. And so yeah, context for the panel, we're going to do about 40 minutes of conversation just between the four of us, and then we'll save 20 minutes for questions. Yeah, and the goal is to try to get actionable and help as much as we can. So with that, I'll turn it over, maybe starting with you, Andrew, and just talk about a little bit more about who you are and how your organization, your role, fits into the larger, helps provide people disaster relief.
Okay. So as he said, my name's Andrew Ropicki. I'm at the University of Florida. I work for Florida SeaGrant. I'm their marine economic specialist, extension specialist. I work a lot with fisheries around the state and around the southeast. Our specific role, SeaGrant and UF-IFAS, we are obviously not a direct aid agency. What we try and do is share information on programs that are available to people after disasters, kind of gather that information, do ground truthing where we can to try and figure out, get you the best information available, and then a lot of it is sharing it, either through our websites, our extension agents around the state, or through some of the fisheries organizations like the Shareholders Alliance or SFA, Organized Fishermen of Florida, all those groups. We try and share that information. So that's kind of my role in the process.
Hey everyone, my name's Devin Resko, Florida Fish and Wildlife Division of Marine Fisheries Management. I'm housed up in Tallahassee in the Panhandle. And a lot of the components I'll discuss today is FWC and me specifically, our roles in the NOAA fishery disaster relief process. That's kind of the one that, at least for fisheries, usually has the most zeros in the bank. We've had some hurricanes over the last 7 or 8 years or so, going back from Irma, Michael, now Ian, Adalia, and then these 2024 storms. That FWC has been very busy with surveying, monitoring the damages and the impacts, and then working on trying to receive some relief to get out to keep these fisheries back up on their feet. So this process that I'll talk about today is more the long-term process for increasing the resiliency of the fisheries and really kind of, again, getting them back up on their feet. So I can provide throughout this talk some updates on what we've done for the previous storms, then transition to the reports and submissions we've done over the last few years, and then what we need from those impacted from the 2024 storms to make sure that we have the best data possible to try and get the maximum amount of relief from NOAA and then to you guys.
Awesome. My name's McCaster. I'm with Pinellas County Economic Development. In that department, there's a role of small business development. And so the major focus is, with the small business development program, is to make sure that all small businesses have access to the resources they need in order to grow their business. Now, that's on a blue sky day, right, when the skies are blue and everybody's worried about just trying to grow their business. But in times of disaster, the team really focuses on helping individuals recover and the businesses recover and get back on their feet. And so we do a couple different things within that. We partner with SBA, FEMA, to bring resources directly to the impacted areas within Pinellas County. But also, we provide information like, if your business was hit, how do we get back to the marketplace? How do you repurpose what you do? How do you market what you do in a different way? And so we're twofold, and we're helping you on a day-to-day basis to help your business grow. But also, when you look at the recovery phase, when you're in a recovery situation, we're there to help you retool who you are to get you back on your feet. That may be getting the resources you need in terms of access to capital, or it could be looking at your business and saying, I need to pivot and do something different. So I have a team of consultants that are there to help in that regards. And that's, in short, what we do.
Cool. I have had a request if we can move the mics a little bit closer to our mouths. Just, yeah, maybe just. Cool. Thank you. Cool. Okay, so we've heard a little bit about the different organizations that you guys are a part of. I was wondering if you could give a quick landscape, because there's a huge range of different programs, different organizations. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more broadly and try to fit everything together when it comes to business and non-business.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start, but I think Corey will have more information on this. Starting with the non-business related stuff, when I give suggestions on where to go for this type of help, the first two I think people should look for. First off is FEMA. That's your individual kind of personal assistance, not really business, but they can help with those immediate needs, housing, your property, transportation. They're just, your business is important, but you got to take care of yourself first. And they're kind of usually very quick to respond, as soon as that federal disaster has been declared, not the fishery disaster, but a federal disaster has been declared in your county, they'll be there pretty quickly and available. I know in the fishery space, I've talked to a lot of fishermen who have had problems with them in the past with previous storms. I'm not sure about in 2024, but FEMA is trying to get better. In 2024, they made some changes. I'm curious if anyone in the room had any experience with them after Milton and Helene, because they've tried to streamline processes, make it easier to access, things like that. And they're trying to make some other improvements as well. One of the things, and we're trying to get more information on this from someone at FEMA. They have a website where they specifically say they have assistance for people who are self-employed. And I took that to mean self-employed like fishermen are, in a tax sense. And this website says if you are self-employed, FEMA may offer money to repair or replace disaster damaged tools and equipment needed to do your job. So it's one of those things. I saw this literally last week. I just found a website and saw that wording, and I sent it to the guy I know at FEMA. I haven't heard back. Obviously, they're very busy, but as soon as I hear something, I'll share it with the fishing organizations and everyone. And hopefully, I'm not expecting that they're going to pay for, your boat and dock repairs, but, if you lost bait and ice and things like that, maybe this will be a path forward with them. The other thing on the as an individual is disaster unemployment assistance. It's, if you lost your job or had a break in employment, if you're self-employed or even just a business owner, you should be eligible for this. And the way you go about accessing it is the same way you would just general unemployment assistance. You go in to the, I believe it's the Florida Department of Commerce, to their website, and start filling stuff out, and they'll determine whether you're eligible for it. And it's got some nice benefits in terms of, instead of 8 weeks, you can get up to 26 weeks if your business or your employer was hit really hard. So that's another option out there. On the business side, unfortunately, and others, on this panel can probably speak to other options. Most of what's available out there is in the form of loans, and the two programs I would talk about, the Florida Emergency Bridge Loan Program. I have talked to fishermen who have had success with this one. And what it is it's basically a working capital loan to get you back on your feet. You can get up to $50,000. It's from the Florida Department of Commerce, and it's a 2-year zero interest loan. It is a loan, so you got to pay it back in 2 years, but there's no interest on it. And if you get one, that's $50,000 to get you started to getting back up and running. And I've talked to some fishermen who have had success with this. I'm pretty sure if you talk to Bob Zales with SFA, he will sing their praises. It worked for him. Now that said, you have to be able to make the payments down the line. And there are some, you have to meet some requirements and things like that. The other program out there is, the SBA loan programs. These are longer term, SBA being the Small Business Administration, so this is a federal program. You can get longer term loans. They do have interest on them. With a disaster like this, they will waive, there will be no interest accrual or payments for the first 12 months on these loans, but you can go out to 30-year terms. Between the two programs they have, one is for physical damage loans, damage to your business. The other one is economic injury, that's covering operating expenses. You can go up to $2 million as their max between the two on a 30-year loan term. Now, what I will say, and I don't know if we have anyone in the room, and hopefully Corey might be able to provide some insight on this. I know fishermen don't have a good track record with the SBA. I haven't met the fisherman who's gotten a loan from SBA. Actually, I don't think I've met anyone who's got one, and I definitely haven't met someone who was happy with, the process. So that's it. In terms of the federal fisheries disaster process and its assistance, I'll stop in just a second, but what I want to say about that is most definitely fill out FWC's surveys, because for there to be a chance of money somewhere down the road, the federal government's going to need to know what your losses were. So please fill out those surveys and encourage others to fill them out on how your business was impacted. What I will say after that is, this is not a program, as it operates now, it's not going to save your business. Do not count on this money. There might be money down the road, but it is a very slow process, and it will be years down the road. You will have either succeeded or, unfortunately maybe failed because of this, these storms, before you will see money from federal fishery disaster assistance. So, at SeaGrant, we tell people, please fill out those surveys. It's valuable, and there's a chance it could help down the road, but do not count on it now, because it is a slow process. And with that, I'll turn it over to the others.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in a little bit and address some of the things that were said previously. With the Florida Bridge Loan, which is a great tool, and I say it's a tool because it's designed to actually get to you faster. Some people kind of debate that sometimes, but it gets to you faster so that you can have cash in your pocket to kind of do some things like pay payroll, keep people around, because we know right now it's a very tough thing in the economy is to keep good people. And so they're trying to get cash into your pocket quickly so that you can meet all of these payroll needs, as well as maybe some other things that's going on with the business. Maybe you have to go in and fix some things before you get you get anything from your insurance or you get anything from the SBA. So it's really designed, the bridge loan for small businesses up to $50,000 is designed to be very, very liquid and fast to you. And then for agriculture, it can go up to $150,000 for agriculture. And it's a 2-year, like you said, 0% interest loan, but it's designed not for you to pay that off in 2 years. usually they're paid off in like 4 months. Because once individuals get their either insurance claims or they apply for the SBA loans, which is 30-year loans in a lot of cases, they go ahead and pay off the bridge loan and they're done with it. And so it's a great tool, and I would say definitely use it. But I want to step back for a second and say to you that when you, in times of disaster, you should look at the way that this funding that's out there is in buckets, right? So I look at it in, you got the federal funds that are out there, SBA and so forth. Those are great resources, great liquidity, and it's this funding that, if you qualify for, and I'll talk a little more about that, you should go after. But then you have state funding, which is like the bridge loan, as well as the state also have some grants and things that are available that you should make yourself available to as well. And then looking into your cities and counties, because counties oftentimes, like with my small business enterprise program, and I'll pivot to that in a minute, but the small business enterprise program is an opportunity for businesses to do work with the county. Well, you say, well, Corey, what does that do in a time of disaster? Well, it keeps you going when if you're down, or if your business is in need of some type of assistance. The county's program allows you to do work with the county, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the line of work that you're doing right now. You could take some of the tractors and the trailers and whatever that you have, because like right now the county is looking for any and everybody that can move waste to move waste. And so there's opportunities there, and I just give that as an example, but the county does open itself up in the time of disaster to be able to help small businesses pivot and continue to do business. It may not be in the line of business that you're accustomed to, but it allows you to continue with the revenue coming in. And then the other thing that's out there are, like I said, there are opportunities from the county when they provide resources and capital sometime in the way of grants, or even in some loan programs as well. So you look at them in those particular buckets, and I think there's a lot that's out there. Now with the SBA loan, that is the one that everybody loves because it's the Cadillac of all loans. And the question earlier was, the statement earlier was, well, a lot of businesses in the fishery don't apply for that. And I say to you, I see that a lot in other industries as well, and it's not because of any one particular thing other than paperwork, right? The paperwork process, especially when you're hustling, you're offshore for days and maybe weeks at a time, all of that kind of stuff, that paperwork process can be a little cumbersome. But I tell you, if you have someone focusing on that paperwork, that return that you're going to get in terms of, when I say return in a disaster, meaning that getting funds into your business faster, recovering faster, getting back on your feet faster, it is worth it. It is worth having someone in your company do the necessary tracking of the paperwork that's necessary to apply for any of these programs. If it's even just your bookkeeping. I was a small business owner myself. I know exactly what it takes in terms of, on a day-to-day basis, tracking the funds that come in, cash coming in, credit cards coming in, checks coming in. I know what that looks like. But I say to you, have someone work on putting that paper trail together so that when it comes time for disaster, you can go in and apply just like any other business. It is absolutely critical. And then with the SBA, the SBA loan, you have, it was mentioned, it's 3 of them. You have the SBA business physical damage loan, and that's up to $2 million. But the great thing about that is if you don't have access to capital, like you can't go out to the bank and get a loan, it only costs you 4%. So if you can go, which in this climate, that's wonderful. You get 4% on a loan. That's tremendous. And so if you don't have that access, you can't just go to the bank and say, hey, Bank of America, I need $150,000. Well, the SBA could be an answer for you at a very low interest rate compared to what's in the marketplace right now. The other part of it is economic injury. And to me, that's a sweetheart. As being a former business owner, economic injury, usually everybody talks about the physical. Okay, did my boat get damaged? Did my docks get damaged? Did my buildings get damaged? But economic injury, meaning that you lost something. You lost money and revenue because you were down. And they give you a long time. I think the window for this is July 11, 2025. You have a long time to put a case together to say that I was injured, I can prove I was injured, and that I lost revenue and money because of the storms. Now, look at what happens on the physical side. December 10th, 2024. The window's very short on when you start talking about physical damage, because everybody wants to get back to work. They close the books quick on that. But when you talk about economic injury, that's a longer runway, a longer period of time for you to be able to get your businesses into the funding stream so that you can get the funds to help you pivot back from the impact that you've had. So I would say those three pieces are great, but then the SBA does another thing. They come back and they say, okay, was your home or other physical properties damaged? And if they were, we have a home loan as well. Now the home loan is when you start looking at this piece, it's really, really crazy when you start thinking about the interest rates right now. They're talking 30 years at 2.813 interest. That's almost no money on the money that they're loaning you, like 2%. And that's for any damages on any personal property or any real estate that may be injured because of the storm. And so pivoting back again, just to say, it is worth the time to fill out the paperwork. It's worth the time of tracking your information on an annual basis, because you don't know when a storm is going to come, but you have your stuff together. And now the other thing, and I'll stop talking for a while and I'll let you guys jump in, but I have a team of consultants in the Small Business Development Center. So, as I started out this conversation, I started talking about how, in economic development here in Pinellas County. So our whole department is Pinellas County Economic Development. In economic development, there's several different divisions. In my particular division, it's all about small business. And inside of the small business division, I have the Small Business Development Center. That center is really designed to help you on a day-to-day basis, making sure that your business is strong and growing. The consultants have, I have the team of consultants that probably have combined years of experience, over 100 years. I mean, Kurt has been around 25 years. Very experienced guy on understanding business, understanding how to put business frameworks and models together, helping you pivot away from some of the things that are not successful for you to doing some of the things that could be more successful for you. You say, Corey, well, how does that impact me in the fishery industry? Well, if you sat down with Kurt and you have a conversation with him about how to market your business, because he's a marketing guru, you talk to him about the ways that you're getting your fish to market right now, I guarantee you, if you partner up with him, work with him over a year, you guys are going to find new ways and new markets to get your fish to market. Guaranteed. He's just that good. And I say the same thing on the finance side. If you're looking to build a new piece of property for your boats, or are you looking to have some other property for your equipment, I have a person on my team that 30 years in banking, and she knows all about finance and how to help you finance what you need for your business. But that doesn't come from one meeting with these folks. These are individuals that you want to be connected to and be in concert with, because these consultants get a lot of information. They go out to events like this. They're always, being the point of contact for city, county, and state information. And so that funnels right into you if you're connected with a small business development consultant. So, and it doesn't cost you anything. Your tax dollars pay for it. And so the longer I see people connect with a counselor, the better the outcomes are for their businesses. For those who come in as one and done, and they're out of there and they don't talk with the consultant for an extended period of time, then the results are not as good. But it's absolutely a free service to you, and it's through the University of South Florida. This is not some people off the street that don't have the background or the gravitas to be able to tell you what is good for your business. They do, and these are experts, and so you should take advantage of them.
Are there SBDCs like all through Florida, or what's the?
Absolutely it is. So what happens is the SBA is the prevailing organization or agency federally. They pass funds down to the states. Well, in the state, the University of West Florida is the main university. It collects all the money for the SBA for the state of Florida. It identifies, I think it's 8 or 9 universities throughout the state. University of South Florida is one, University of North Florida, University of Florida, University of Central Florida. So all over the state, you have these outshoots. University of West Florida passes the money down to those universities to be able to provide consulting services to you at no cost.
And, sorry, and are they also in other Gulf of Mexico states as well? Is this a national program?
Oh, absolutely. It is definitely a national program. I'm sorry, I'm so fixed on the home state, you know. It's all about Florida. But yeah, it is nationwide. So no matter where you live, you can access a consultant in your neighborhood. It centers around the university. So if you have University of Michigan, I'm sure they have a SBDC center, or they have micro centers throughout that neighborhood. University of California, same thing. So no matter where you go, there's a small business development center that's there that's able to provide you great information about what's going on in the marketplace and in your area around business.
Cool. All right, I'm going to keep on talking a little bit about SBA, and then before we flip over to a new topic.
Sure.
So you mentioned like the importance of collecting information. Can you talk about what types of information are important to have when you're about to apply for an SBA loan or these other types of programs?
Well, the very first thing is you got to be able to show that you're a legitimate business, and that's no slight on anybody in here. I'm just saying that as a business owner, I operated for 2-3 years, and thinking back, I'm probably thinking I probably couldn't show that I was a legitimate business, other than I was going out, doing commercial landscaping, selling palm trees and other types of nursery type products. But I hadn't done enough to be able to say, if someone walked in and say, okay, who runs this business, who owns this business, who has the most interest in this business, I could show that. I could say it was me, but I probably couldn't show it on paper. And so you want to be able to show that you're registered with the state. That's the easy part of it. But you also want to show who's the owner of the business, because a lot of people have husband and wife, your son and father that are on the business. But guess what? When it's time to kick tail, meaning from the bank, and the bank wants to know who they need to come and kick in the britches, they need to talk to somebody. And so you want to be able to show that business is set up so that there's a main point of contact. Do I ever think 50-50 is a good thing? No. 50-50 is never good. You got 2 asses to kick, it's hard to kick 2 asses, right? So you want to make it 80-20, that's fine. Maybe even 60-40 you could get away with. But you don't want to have 50-50 on there, because that just doesn't do justice when you go to talk about getting funding from a bank or from even from the government. It's very difficult to justify. The other thing is your finances, bookkeeping. And I know everyone says, well, Corey, bookkeeping is a drag. I don't have time to do this. I'm out fishing, and then I come in and I got to sell stuff. And I got a lot of things to do. Well, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you what I tell everybody that I used to consult with. Fire yourself as a bookkeeper. You're not a good one anyway, right? You fish. There are people out there for small amounts of money, and when I say small, a couple $100, maybe in a quarter, for them to do your bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is nothing more than just taking what's out there in what you've done in terms of transaction and record it in a ledger, putting it in the chart of accounts. Well, these people can do that, and now guess what? They don't have to come see you anymore. All they got to do is say, hey, I need your paperwork, and you just upload it into a particular system, and they can go and grab it, and then they can put everything in the QuickBooks for you and never even come out to the docks where you're fishing. And so it is worth the time and energy to actually pull together your financials and be able to show people on an ongoing basis consistency around the revenue streams that you have coming in for your business. And then the final thing that I would say around paperwork, when they're looking at paperwork for an SBA loan, got to be able to tell people what you need, right? So I always say, because I had an old man that was a businessman too, and he always used to be able to tell a sad story in a moment's notice. If someone's asking him about, what his needs are, he could sing the song better than a canary, right? And I think you should be able to do the same thing. When someone, you're walking into a bank or you're walking into the SBA or whatever one of these programs, and they ask you what your needs are. What is it that you need? Why do you need this money? How much do you need? You got to be able to answer that question, and that's sources and uses. Where's the money going to come from, and how much do you need, right? Because nobody, including the SBA, wants to be on the hook for everything. So you're going to show, hey, I'm going to put X amount of dollars in my recovery. I got some partners that are going to put some money in the recovery, and then I'm looking for the SBA to fill this gap because we need this equipment. That's the story you're saying. Now, the SBA and all of the banks, everybody looks at this and goes, wonderful. We're going to give you the money. Those are the three things that I think you should do.
Awesome. All right, now let's move a little bit more towards NOAA's disaster relief. Devin, can you talk a little about how the program works, and what the status currently is for past requests?
Yeah, so like Andrew mentioned, this is the long-term process. So to provide some context, if Hurricane Hugh hits June 1st, if it hits June 1st of one year, it typically takes about a month to 2 months where we gather preliminary data, determine that yes, a disaster request is warranted. We then work with the governor's office to formally request a disaster determination from the Secretary of Commerce, which NOAA is housed under. So at that process, as soon as the hurricane leaves that area that it impacted, the stopwatch starts. Because we need 1 year of post-Hurricane Hugh landings. It's one thing that we have to meet with these disaster determinations is a 35% or more drop in commercial landings, usually a 5-year pre-storm average compared to 1 year. If you don't meet that 35%, it's off the table. If it is between 80 and 35%, that's where we develop a report looking at the type of fisheries that were affected. We can now include for-hire charter, wholesale dealer, infrastructure damages and losses. So we can provide a little bit more pieces of the pie of the damages. But 1 year after the storm, then we have to review the landings, develop the report, submit it. So really, it'll take about 18 months or so after the storm event until we have a nice concrete disaster report, FWC does, to submit to NOAA. That part, federal wheels turn slowly sometimes, so it can be a while, and we could be going back and forth with NOAA Fisheries. If it is approved, then we work with the Office of Management and Budget to make sure all of the spend plan components are correct. And that is if Congress has money to provide. If the budget does not allow for any disaster determinations at that moment, we're kind of in a holding pattern until we do get some funding. Recently, over the past few years, there was the Fishery Resources Disaster Improvement Act, or FREDI. That does provide some timelines, both for the state and the requester, as well as NOAA and Office of Management and Budget, to hold to those timelines. So it does speed up the process and make it a little bit more efficient, but some of those, some people who may have received funding from Hurricanes Irma or Michael, it was 2.5 years after the storm. So kind of echoing what Andrew said, that this funding should not be a vital component to your make it or break it for your operations. This is really to provide reimbursement for any type of damages or repairs that were done. We also do have the economic injury, to where we do look at your losses that you weren't able to get out and fish or to charter. You didn't have as much product to purchase and sell, so we do provide some of that. But it is a lengthy process, both for the requester and for the applicants, knowing that a storm hit from this disaster, and you may not receive any type of funding through this avenue of funding for, again, up to 2 to 2.5 years.
Can you talk a little about, so you mentioned earlier that there's some information that is really helpful to have from businesses about impacts like now, that helps your request, but then also, like, how do you determine, like, which businesses, let's just say you guys get a huge flow of money to provide to businesses. How do you determine which businesses and how much?
Yeah, so preliminary surveys are very important for us. So we do have some out for the 2024 storms. For any Florida licensed commercial fishermen, wholesalers, charters, bait and tackle through retail licenses, as well as any commercial fisher who has traps. We sent out surveys a few weeks ago. It was through Gov Delivery, so if you think you should have received a survey and you haven't, check your spam. I'll have some QR codes for all of the disasters I'll leave with you here to where you can locate the surveys pretty quickly. We also have a dedicated webpage. If you just Google FWC Hurricane Relief, it should pop up. All of the surveys are on there. We also have a dedicated email address, hurricanerelief@myfwc.com. If you have any questions or concerns about the surveys, you can certainly reach out to us that way. But again, this preliminary surveying is very important to have just some initial ballpark figures on damages and impacts to be able to provide to the governor's office, to Rubio and Scott's offices to try and locate and source emergency funding. A lot of this data is more qualitative than quantitative in nature, so I don't need your infrastructure losses down to the penny, just ballpark it. That's all we need at this moment, because when it does come time to develop that report to NOAA for the 2024 hurricanes, another survey will go out that will ask for those very quantitative, specific losses to be able to increase the amount of information we have for those reports. And so, these surveys are very important. They'll be out for a few more weeks, so don't think that you have to get them completed right now or anything like that. But the more data that we have coming in really helps shape our focus on some of those initial steps moving forward. Right now, we're probably only hovering between a 10 and 15% submission rate for all of those surveys that we have sent out. With some of the other hurricanes and COVID relief programs we've had, we were more in the 20 to 25, maybe 30% ballpark. So we definitely want to get those numbers up. So definitely reach out to your friends, colleagues, making sure that those surveys were submitted, because again, it helps us maximize the funding that we can then get out to you guys.
And then final question, I guess just follow up on that. Mm-hmm. So I guess after you receive funds to DVO, how do you decide the other half of that?
Yeah, so once we have a good idea that we'll be able to receive some funding from Congress and from NOAA, we really look at the proportion of losses. So that does factor in a lot into our surveys, is if it is, if wholesale dealers were really impacted, a lot of infrastructure related losses and damages that are very expensive, we may move the amount of funding, turn the knob to where wholesale dealers receive a little bit more. But in our spend plan that we do submit to NOAA, that we do welcome and incorporate all public feedback, we do provide that information. We say we're going to get, I'm just going to throw out $20 million for the 2024 storms. In that spend plan, we will have the geographic scope. We will have how much goes to wholesalers, charters, FWC for internal things, because I have to pay the bills as well, so I have to receive a little bit. We have to have money for mailing out those applications and et cetera. But all that will be public knowledge before we do submit it to NOAA.
So you said that applies to retail paint shops as well?
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, we're at 40 minutes, so I wanted to open up the floor to more questions, actually. Thanks for opening it up, Tim. Go for it, Joe.
Well, here's my experience. Irma, okay, took a while. What happened was it was a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to, you guys have all the info. Do you know that my personal book, Dollar Rogers, had $212,000 worth of fish sales? You came up with a percentage, and I got that check. It wasn't about the actual loss. You just paid on a figure. If if I'm correct, I've talked to, if you and I talked a while back today, and my wholesale license was a percentage. Is that going to work different? Because it wasn't about the actual law, because I could show you an income tax, you know, from 5 years, right?
Yeah, so traditionally it has been that the application has a statement that you attest to saying you were impacted by the storm, and we did take all the applications that we did receive and then pennies on the dollar to make sure that everyone got the same percentage. So we used the hypothesis that if there are two applicants, one makes twice as much as the other in their fishery business, they were impacted twice as much, so they would receive twice as much as funding. But for some programs, we did do reimbursements based off of damages. So some dealers could submit receipts and invoices for, hey, I lost freezers, or I had other types of uninsured losses, and we did pay out percentage on those as well.
Well, the fact is that your all records are pretty good, okay, because I'm a dealer and also I access people's SPL accounts. So if you sold fish, there's a record of something, right? Sold them under the table, that's why you can turn the IFQ division. You know, there's people that sold it under the table and there isn't anything for them, right? So I like that idea. The fact is, you can't have an SPL license, caught no fish, you get patient.
Sure. Yeah, and to just kind of springboard off that, some problems that some people have had is we would receive information or emails from charter saying, hey, I'm kind of off the books. Can I include that information on my application? We would say, no, that's opening a can of worms you don't want to open. No. Not only are you going to have to repay some of this funding, but you're going to have other people knocking on your door. So we had that, and then kind of translating that to SPL, we did have some like deckhands that would reach out and say, hey, I fished, but I fished under my boss's vessel SPL. How do I get some of this funding? And again, it's through our landing, so you have to take that up with your boss. And if your boss wants to hold on to that, that's not much that we can do in terms of this project.
Yeah, because the folks that can't prove it, listen, that was the whole thing about the program for the charter boats, right? So you can track them, they're supposed to put a dollar amount. You know what I mean? If you don't want to put a dollar amount, then you go to the income tax. But somebody working under the table doesn't have an income tax that's going to substantiate it either. So this is where some of the guys in Spain had, I know personally, they got never reported a lot of their charter business. They didn't get anything from them.
Well, and I know specifically for Hurricane Michael with Panama City, a very charter-heavy area, we had applicants, and we said, yep, all this looks good on your application. We audited some of them, and some of them left emails and said, I respectfully withdraw my application, and we left it at that. So yeah, I mean, I'm a marine biologist by trade, but I can do an audit, and we have people within FWC that do audits, and NOAA, they want to make sure that this funding is being done correctly and efficiently, so they have a team of auditors as well. So, yes.
I have a clarifying question on the bridge one.
Yes.
So there was a bucket that was $150,000 for agriculture, and you said there was another limit that was $50,000 for
Small business.
For small business.
Yeah.
Okay. So first question is, how do you define agriculture? Because there is a conversation about like including seafood in the farm bill. So is that through federal definition of agriculture or is it state level?
And that's a great question. I mean, you put a question out there that I can't answer. I mean, because that would be a Florida Commerce question, because, you know, when we look at the bridge loan, and it does evolve. I mean, and it has some discretion there for the governor and his team to look at who's impacted and be able to broaden, if you will, the scope of the program. I would say, you know, if you could make a case, and this is just Corey talking, if you could make a case that you were injured and you're in a particular industry, I would have those conversations. I would bring that forward. I'll put my application in. They would have to tell me, you know, no, you know, you don't qualify. But I really do think that you're in an arena where you're solid, you're producing or providing a product to the marketplace. You were impacted. You could show that you were in the industry and you were working. I don't know what else you would need. Yeah, so I would say yes, we should be able to qualify.
And then a follow-up question on bridge loan. This is for the SBA loan.
Mhm.
You have until July, so you have until July 11th, 2025 to prove economic injury for these past two storms.
Correct.
Over what time period? Economic injury over, like, up to July 11th, or is it like 6 months?
It's up to July 11th.
Okay,
So-
from storm to July 11th.
Correct, yeah. So once the declaration was made to July 11th.
Sean?
Sean Beck, I'm an owner-operator. My question is it only a disaster if Uncle Sam says it is? Because during the Irma, when they went back to 5 years, we had back-to-back 2015, 2016 red tide that killed every shellfish, every crab, shrimp, everything there was in Charlotte Harbor. But I never got a letter that said, hey, by the way, since red tide killed your industry, the federal government's going to come in and say, we'll help you out.
Yeah, it is a federal declaration and then a state declaration of disaster.
Coming in this week, I seen Red Grouper just bellied up dying from red tide.
Yeah, and
What that's gonna do.
yeah, and we were just talking about that, actually last week, about how to communicate that in a way that,
From Tampa Bay to Fort Myers, Marco Island, it's killed it.
yeah, it's on the radar, and it definitely needs more attention. But yeah, it is a federal and then a state declaration of disaster.
Well, when you're basing how much money you make.
And no, I get you. I completely and I agree.
During Irma, you guys went back 5 years.
I think he's talking about the fishery disaster
Yeah.
declaration
Oh,
process,
fishery,
which is
I'm
a little
sorry.
different.
But unfortunately, yes. So we did have that instance with Irma. I think we might be transitioning to a new period that is going to be more helpful because we can now exclude years that hurricane disaster declarations have been done. So
So it went from a red tide to a hurricane to COVID to, I mean, it's
Right.
5 years of just.
yeah.
in the nuts.
And in regards to COVID, that will pose a problem because we did talk to NOAA. We've talked to them multiple times saying if we do get a hurricane disaster declaration, we do have to look back those past 5 years or so. Can we exclude 2020 because of the COVID year? And they said no. That does make it difficult. But I will say that we do have Hurricane Ian. We have submitted that. We are kind of waiting any day now to hear back from NOAA on the yay or nay. And then with Hurricane Idalia, we will be submitting our disaster report in early 2025. So we're going to be doing some more of those quantitative surveys in the region that was affected there. But yes, we totally understand that is difficult, and that's something that we did hear a lot from Southwest Florida.
As a fisherman, it's an affected area. I was just wondering, because I went from shrimping those years when it was bad to fishing offshore when it was good, and you said, man, you made a lot of money. I said, no, I paid out a lot of money. You know, and that's what they don't see either. Because I've had a discussion with you over the phone saying, hey, what you get paid and what you have to pay out are two different numbers. You know, as far as leasing allocations and all of that stuff. And I'm dealing with Felix with NOAA right now saying your economic report is wrong because there's no way you can only make $19,000 if you spend $50,000 leasing Florida. So, I guess getting on paper right is the first step.
Was it, the money figured on gross? It wasn't on net?
Yeah, so that's something that,
So if you spent 50,000, you got 50,000 for your fish, but you went home with 19 grand. Because 31 was spent for
That's all
allocation.
what you cleared.
well,
Well, no, we're talking about for the disaster one. In other words, if you quoted, let's just take being taken off the top and you never actually have it in your hand, but if you actually want to buy your quota for 50,000, and then you declare a disaster relief, if you did 10 trips and you have 500,000 in quota, that's a gross, you got paid for that in your fish. But you didn't actually end up with that in your hand, but it's going to help you
I
with
think
the
it's
disaster.
almost looked at a cost of doing business anymore, and someone at my level, I don't get a write off, but I pay, it's all wrapped up in one lump sum. looks at an SBL number and says, Jesus, you landed $88,000 worth of seafood, whoa!
But you're gonna get disaster money, maybe.
That actually helps you, yeah.
It helps you. You just
I
need to
don't
make
think
sure
it did,
that.
because in comparison to when they did an average over 5 years, you know, you landed $88,000 this year, the years prior to that, and then it add up, right? That's why I got up. I mean, yeah, if you're to say that I actually made $30,000, paid $50,000 in an allocation, and this is what I cleared, then you add that up with the average of the 5 years, you say, yeah, he did take a whack, which was the 35% that had to be shown as a loss, but it doesn't show it through the FWC computer because it's not deducting the price of allocation. Because NOAA Fishery wants to know what your, I think it's the number 9 on the log report, has the trip economics been determined? You know, that's where it all will come down to. But NOAA, this is from my understanding. They want to see what the trip is determined as before they'll say what it's worth. Does that make any sense?
Well, in regards to any future storm disaster declaration for commercial fishers, yeah, like has been mentioned, landings are pretty concrete, so that's usually what we use. But in some of those surveys that we do, both the ones that we have now and the ones that we'll have just prior to that disaster report, the last box we always say is, do you have any issues in regards to this disaster process that we have outlined that can, you know, possibly be tweaked to help the commercial fisher, wholesaler, et cetera. And that's something that at that point we're, you know, very excited to get that kind of feedback and see if we can incorporate it into those future storms. Because something that NOAA has mentioned is if the disaster does get approved, we get money allocated. When we develop the spend plan, the state does have a lot of wiggle room in regards to how we utilize this funding.
Another quick question on the federal disaster. So the, landings are pretty concrete, you have that into the determine 35% more drop in landings. Does that include looking at like trip tickets for like the next vessel, like an average drop in next vessel value as like a proxy for economic loss?
Right. So that fund or that figure that looking at the 5 years prior and the 1 year after for those ex-vessel landings. That is the big yay or nay on if you're going to be able to continue or it stops now, you do not get any funding. So, correct, yes, yeah. And so if we are between that, anything over 80% is pretty much a guaranteed we're going to get some funding to you. Anything between that 35 and 80%, that's when we provide additional information in that report. And again, now with that new law, Freddie, we're able to incorporate a lot more information on the for-hire sector, for wholesale dealer infrastructure damages, et cetera, just to kind of beef up those numbers. Because historically, when only looking at the landings, we do receive a certain amount of funding, but that's going to go for all the sectors. And then that's when you start working on those pennies on the dollar. So being able to say, yes, the ex-vessel landings of hopefully more than 35% equate to this many millions. By the way, we have this million from the for-hire and this many million from the wholesale dealer, just provides a much clearer picture of the damages.
One more quick question. When you're talking about a wholesale dealer, so I'm an owner-operator, a wholesale dealer, and a retail dealer. So a lot of fish I've been purchasing off of other dealers, some of which are in this room, like a large quantity. So those aren't going to be on any of your records because they've already landed the fish. I purchased the fish off them, say 1,000 pounds, and then resell that product. So as a wholesale dealer, you guys taking into account something like that where you have dealers working together, purchasing fish off each other that aren't going to be showing on high logs because they came off of his boats.
Yep, so that will be the extra information that we do provide in those reports. And that's something that in these surveys that we have, that's something that you can provide to us so we have an idea.
You just put like a comment section?
No,
$50,000 worth of fish off this person?
in the survey that there are, so right now we're looking at your losses and everything. So that's where it comes into that economic injury on. We have both losses to date and your total expected loss until you're back up to 100% running. So there is a spot for that on any type of lost income from not being able to purchase from other dealers with the storms.
I I guess one final question to Andrew. So obviously there's a lot of damage to businesses themselves, but there's also a lot of damages to working waterfronts and like the infrastructure that's needed to go fishing at all. I was wondering if you could talk about programs that currently exist, that could exist in the future to support those, to build those.
Yeah, there's here in Florida, there's one right now that's already out there. It's not, so these things aren't necessarily specific to disasters, but they are opportunities for money for working waterfronts. And the one that's currently available is a state program. It's called the Stan Mayfield Working Waterfront Capital Outlay Program. It provides funding to commercial fishermen, wholesale dealers, retail license holders to maintain their operations. The idea is to keep working waterfronts working. And it'll come up, the application period will be in July. It usually is, it was for 2024. So it's not tied to a disaster, but it is a way to get grant money. And they do grants anywhere from $5,000 to $250,000. And it can be used for, repair, maintenance of equipment, infrastructure, shoreside facilities, all that stuff. So we do have one program. Yeah, Stan Mayfield, Working Waterfront Capital Outlay Grant Program, it's called. Yeah. The other stuff that's out there, there are, in terms of that infrastructure, after these disasters, it's not timely, but money will flow in certain instances. It's just, a lot of times it doesn't flow, and I know this is a little rough to hear, to private businesses. Like take for instance, Hurricane Ian. The state has set aside $7.5 million to rebuild the shrimp docks that were out in front of Trico's property, and they're going to go ahead and do that. Well, so it won't be for Trico. It'll be for just shrimp boats generally. So I would guess that it's shrimp that's going to be landed and go to Erickson and Jensen because they're there. But it is a chance. It is a landing site. Now, the state.
So is it the state going to own the property at that point?
The Lee County has some. Yeah, Lee County owns the property, and they used to lease it to Trico. They will still own that property. Lee County will, and it's dual use. So, as I understand it, the shrimpers can use it, but it's also for emergency response and preparedness. So there will be other facets there, and that type of money, that state grant money, it does, there aren't specific programs for it. It does pop up from time to time, but unfortunately it's generally for something that's municipally owned or owned by a county like that.
See how that upset some of the fishermen though, to see that the county owned stuff is going to get fixed right away. And some other friends of mine who lost their entire fish houses, all their docks in there, they can't get a penny.
Yeah.
Can't get a single penny right now. They haven't got a penny.
No, it's.
That's just not, it's not right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, it wasn't me who made this decision. Yeah.
To see government take care of government, and then small business people, which is what we're talking about here, are just sitting here just losing and losing. This is down there, this is 3 hurricanes, this is 3 major floods in 2 years.
Yeah.
Complete loss. My buddy's bait shop, my friends, and I run my business from my home. So yeah, I take some damage, but it's my home. It's not a working waterfront for anybody but me. But at the end of the day, yeah, I got some friends that I work with and I care about. They've lost everything. Literally, our state government, our federal government has stepped up and done zero for them. Nothing. No money.
Yeah,
Frustrating.
there are a couple of programs, are pieces of legislation being considered at the federal level. I won't go into too much detail on them, but they would be, grants available to private entities for working waterfronts, for restoration and things like that. They wouldn't be storm specific, There is one, the newest one actually looks pretty promising to me, and it's geared towards private industry. And the idea is, I want to get the name right on this, the Working Waterfronts Disaster Mitigation Tax Credit Act. So, right now, if you go out and you buy solar to put on your house, you can get a 30% of it covered. If you buy an electric car, you can get some of that covered. Well, what this would be is if when you invest in your working waterfront, the infrastructure, it would be a 30% tax credit on covering things, to harden that infrastructure against future losses, whatever that is, whether that's, driving giant poles in so that, boats can go up and down, or whatever the disaster mitigation is. It'd be a 30% tax credit, which, depending on what the additional costs are, might cover it. So it might make it to the point where, just replacing a wooden dock might now not be the right investment for you. It might be building something that's even hardened, so when the next storm comes, hopefully it survives.
Do you think that would have any impact if it's, a working waterfront house and a commercial property? Now, mine's a residential property, but yet it has separate buildings. So it's going to be kind of that thing where...
That one might be tricky for you if it's personal property.
Like I said, there's a separate little warehouse and everything.
Yeah.
Where I'm trying to change the docks around because it was 7 foot over top of my dock this last storm, so, it's not like I can put a lift in there right now. Technically needs a floating dock of some sort.
I know one of the oldest fish houses in Florida down in St. James City is like completely off the map, and they're just working waterfront community. That was a working waterfront community. That poor old man down there, he about out of business.
Yeah.
The stress alone.
With Tim Casey was rebuilding, he's up there working in my house.
I know.
So
It's not just Casey,
He's going to rebuild his waterfront because the governor cut out a piece of money to rebuild that, right? So that's all gone again? All the docks came up because...
I drove past it, I just offloaded
That was
Pine
it.
Island yesterday, so now the pilings are still there, but some of the docks are peaked up like that. So they're gonna have to do some more work on it.
That's what Andrew did now.
And the whole building is completely gutted and blown out as well.
Again. So the docks we're talking about is, they should have been floating docks.
True.
In all honesty, every freaking dock in Florida should be a floating dock.
And every building should be on stilts at this point. Stop bringing in the filter. If you're on the water, build a still home. Stop flooding all your neighbors, because that's what's happening down in Medina. Everybody comes in, they're gonna build everything up. Now, all the other neighborhoods are flooding. Like every storm, every neighborhood is flooding on the River right now.
But getting back to the money for strengthening modern and new thinking, because the team had to, all the docks are part of their law. Every dock is floating, almost all of them, but they just because the poles weren't high enough. That Franco place is going to put in floating docks.
They got it like that down in Salty Sands, and you know what they do? They float up and land on somebody else's boat.
But you got to have the poles high enough.
Yeah, that's the problem though, like in the end, same thing. The poles were 12 feet high, and one of the docks, one of my boats was on over top of the pole. How high can you make it?
Well,
They're already to the ceiling.
the new marina that was built with Team Hatchie put them almost 17 feet tall. And they did it all because the storm surge was over 20. Now, over 20 something, you'll never see that.
Yeah.
Because you just don't have the landscape to cut that water like that. Oh, I wouldn't think so, God, I know it's now, like, it's all.
I didn't think it'd be flooding the way it is because it's so shallow in that last. Man, this last 2 years is.
A lot of that money goes to prices like homes that have to be built up. 40% of the home on stilts is just getting built on stilts now. So the whole cost has changed. Money just not going to buy this the new way we got to think of it.
No, yeah, we gotta build smart, keep rebuilding the same stuff, for sure. Floating docks is definitely an answer.
Hey, Hugh. So something else to, I don't know, almost dangle a carrot, and I don't have much to information to provide, but the governor's office did provide $1 million to FWC's foundation for waterfront, rebuilding the waterfronts from the storms. It's particularly Debbie and Helene. So right now we don't have too much information on it. We do have some meetings scheduled this week internally. We're still meeting with the governor's office just to understand kind of the sandbox that we can play within. So that's something that hopefully we'll have some more updates in the next few weeks to be able to provide some of that.
Those meetings, I just ask you to consider that not every working waterfront is a giant commercial fish house. There's a lot of us that can't afford a big fish house because everything's multi-million dollars now. We're late in the game. So, I had to buy a property that would work for me. I'm not saying I don't even want money to get us. I won't even apply for this stuff because I'll just keep trying to reinvent myself and not take it until I'm somebody that does need it. I'd rather go to the other guys that did lose their boats, that did lose all these things. But at the end of the day, it's like, we got these big pools of money that they're just like, okay, we're gonna give it. I don't think it's getting in the right hands. You know what I mean? It's not getting in the right hands right now. And I think that in your guys' meetings, it might be helpful to take some people that are smaller owner operators to see their side of the story other than just, oh, well, this happened on Casey's place, or this happened in Deer Beach, or this and that. There's a whole other level, and those are the fishermen for the future.
Sure.
I'm not even speaking about myself, getting out there in the years, but the guys that work for me, the guys after that, like working waterfronts, I keep hearing this term, and nobody's got a solution for it. Like, oh, there's a little bit of money for it. A little bit of money doesn't get you to work the waterfront. You need to look outside the box and realize that working waterfront's going to have to change because everything on the water is going to be a giant condo, or you got to be grandfathered in, or you're not going to get it. Not this industry. It's not with board costs, and licensing costs, and gas costs, and everything else goes. It doesn't matter if we sat there and throw out that we made $700,000 a year because there's going to be $650,000 worth of expense. I mean, that's an extreme case. Obviously, it's not that bad, or I wouldn't be sitting here today still fishing for it.
Sure.
But constantly got to reinvent ourselves. You constantly got to find ways to make money because it's not just storms. Obviously the council is always saying things like, we don't control the pollution. I get that. Somebody's got to hold, the Army Corps of Engineers accountable. Obviously with these big hurricanes, this is going to reduce red tide. There's also a bunch of new trees coming out, and everybody wants to focus on taking our fish away instead of looking at what the real root causes are and what's causing this stuff. Everybody thinks it's a disaster. Let's just give a little bit of money. Let's give them a couple $1,000 to shut them up. It's not a fix. Big poles so that the docks don't come over the docks. That's a fix. You know what I mean? So just doing the same thing over and over again and throw a little bit of money at everybody, that's not.
Yeah, and I just want to add, though, and I don't like to talk about the loans as much, but I got to say the SBA and their disaster mitigation program takes into account exactly what you're talking about, is that you want to harden your actual facilities and so forth so that you have another hurricane, it doesn't come in and destroy everything again. And they're allowing for those expenses to be included. So it's not about what has happened. The mitigation program is about what is to happen or may happen in the future. And that requires planning. That requires, and I don't see a lot of people going after those funds, but it requires you to plan and understand exactly what the limits are that you want to set when you think about the next hurricane that's coming. So to hear about the 20-foot pole or the 17-foot pole, those are the kinds of things that you have to bring to the table for your industry when you're talking to the SBA about future funding for mitigation.
I have thought of the SBA after Ian, about the Fort Myers was talking. What you're saying makes a lot of sense, and borrowing money at 2%, you're right. The problem is, what's the credit guidelines, number one? Number two, when I went and met Fort Myers, they weren't very helpful.
Really?
No, it wasn't like they didn't sit down and say, hey, fill out this application. And no offense, you gotta understand the industry. Like, the job we do is a very difficult job, and most people can't handle it. So, yeah, we have so much time fishing, selling fish, getting ready to fish, preparing boats, that, let's just be honest. I mean, it's the industry as far as a whole, people in it, they don't always have the best credit. So somebody that's kicks butt fishing and really works hard to provide a bunch of food for the community, but maybe they don't have a great credit score, so unfortunately your SBA situation doesn't apply for that.
Yeah, I mean, with disaster loans, when you start looking at it, credit is not the prevailing factor, decision
I just
point.
don't even know what the credit guidelines are.
Yeah,
Once again, when I sat down with the SBA, I didn't especially right after the end.
Okay.
I was told to go see them, and when I was there, there was nothing out there.
Okay. So, I mean, so you're in Fort Myers, you said?
I'm in Bonita Springs.
Bonita Springs. Okay. If you have a card or something on you, I want to connect you with the right person there so they can answer your questions, because I think at the end of the day, when you start looking at the SBA disaster, it's not the traditional business loans that they have. This is a disaster loan, so all of the requirements are lowered, including the actual credit scores. Even on the bridge loan. The bridge loan was at 600 credit score. Now it's down to like 540. I think they dropped it down, or 550. So they're reducing the requirements. I just don't think that when you look at the SBA disaster, credit is not the main determining factor. They're looking at misbehavior. If they're looking at in your history to see, in your credit history to see if there's any misbehavior. If there's no misbehavior and you just have a low credit score because things happen, it's the rub of the game, right? Well, credit scores go up and down. They know that and they're okay with that. It's just the fact that if there's anything in the past that they may have,
Or if there's something where they could put a lien on, say, the boat or something, that's part of the security.
Well, I mean, remember, disaster is not about.
Just put you further back.
It does. But it is a way to move forward. I mean, I had a young man and his father come, and his father was like, "I'm done. 42 years, two restaurants on the beach side, and it's over. I'm not doing this anymore." But at the end of the day, he had to be able to move forward because his son wanted to take over the business, and the only way they could do that is through the SBA lending. And he had to go ahead and take the disaster loan to get the business back viable, so that his son can go out and get the loan that he needed in order to buy the business. So, I mean, these loans are definitely not the answer totally, but it is something that helps give you options to move forward.
Sorry, one other quick thing. It was related to what Ashford said about, you asked about the $150,000 on the bridge loans for ag. I know some of the fisheries groups in Florida, some of the industry organizations have had talks. FDAX has another program. Now, this would be for the future, so it's not a right now thing. But they have the Florida Agriculture and Aquaculture Producers Natural Resource Disaster Recovery Loan Program. It's a mouthful. But it's an FDAX run thing that for ag and aquaculture right now, these folks can get 10-year loans up to $500,000 with 3 years of deferred payments, and over the life of the loan they get a 30% principal reduction. So what they have said on phone calls, this is to fishing groups here in Florida, is that they're going to consider adding seafood industry as a food production technology. Now, they've said that in the last 2 weeks after a few terrible storms and right before an election. So I don't want to. I just wanted to throw that out there, give the information I had heard. Whether it still holds on Wednesday morning, who knows? But that might be something, another loan program in the future. That idea of ag and fisheries being, accomplishing the same goal.
Let's be honest, we're food producers.
Exactly.
Just farming, just as much as anything.
Absolutely.
And I know most of the people in here, all my seafood stays in town. None of it gets shipped anywhere, none of it gets shipped out of the country. So it'd be great if we could get taken into like more like the farmers and stuff, a little more respect for our fishermen. I think is what all of us are looking for.
All right. Well, it's been a great discussion. Thank you to all of you for coming out, and thank you everybody here for showing up. With that, I think that we can wrap it up, and I'll if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to share some of your contact information so people can reach out and,
Sure.
and ask more questions. But yeah, I think that we'll wrap this up. At 1:30, we're planning to start the Quota Bank annual meeting to talk about that program. So if you want to stick around, please do so. But yeah, I think that was great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.